Hi everybody, let's talk a little bit about Autopilot, what it is and what it is not. So let's start out with what Microsoft advertises Autopilot as. Microsoft really kind of advertises it as this configuration service where it's going to get your machine ready for first use for a user, installing applications, sending out configurations like OneDrive setup, BitLocker, things like that. But in reality, Autopilot doesn't do any of those things. Intune is the service that does all of those things. Autopilot's job is to easily and quickly walk a machine into Intune with the minimum amount of effort on the users. So how does it do this? Well, the first thing we do is we get the Autopilot device, the device itself, registered in a certain tenant's Autopilot service. Now we can do this manually by extracting what's called the hardware hash from a machine via the PowerShell. That's kind of a pain in the neck. You have to boot the machine up for the first time, then you have to get into a command shell. You have to start the PowerShell, you have to download a script, you have to run the script. That exports or that results in a CSV file. You got to get that CSV file somewhere else so that you can upload it with the service. The other way to do this, the much better way, and it's getting easier to do this, is for the manufacturer or the reseller to do this for you. Manufacturers like Lenovo and Dell, even Microsoft with the Surface devices, they can pre-upload this information into your tenant before they ship your devices, so it's already there. Usually it costs a little bit extra for this per device, but it's not that much, and it's well worth the price. Even middle resellers now are doing this, like CDW and the like. For them, it's always going to be some kind of cost, and they kind of have different services. They'll actually do some of the Intune configuration for you if you like, but it's up to you. The minimum, though, they need to get these devices into your tenant, and they're going to need administrative privileges in your Office 365 tenant in order to do this. So you'll have to get an admin privilege document signed, giving them rights to add devices. So once that's done, what does Autopilot actually do, and is it worth all that effort to get it running for your devices? Well, yes, if you can get all of that done and make it easy for the manufacturer to get these devices into your tenant, then it is worth it. Let's go over a couple of scenarios from the user's point of view for how devices get into management, and by that I mean into Azure Active Directory and more specifically into Intune. So if a device is not listed in the Autopilot service, when a machine boots up for the first time, the machine's still going to query the Autopilot registration service to see if there is a tenant that it belongs to. If it doesn't belong to a tenant, then it just boots up with a normal out-of-box flow for the user. The user will choose a few things: keyboard, layout, language. They'll have to agree to the license. It will ask them that, hey, is this a personal device or is this for an organization? They'll choose organization, presumably, if they're going to try and join our organization. And then it'll ask them to type in their username in the form of an email address or a universal principal name, a UPN. Now they could join this device to any tenant if they wanted to at that point. Whatever they type in, it's going to find that tenant, and if they're allowed to join a machine to the tenant by default, you can join devices to any tenant that's not locked down by default, then they can join it to some other tenant other than our tenant, which would not be good. So once that's done, they will be enrolled in Intune. Intune will take over, and everything will be great. We'll configure their device. A couple of problems with that arise, though. One of the main problems with that is that they're going to be an administrator. on their local device. That's just how it works. That user will be a local administrator. And we probably don't want that, so now we're going to have to do some trickery with Intune to make sure that they get yanked out of that. And that's not always the best thing to do. The second thing is our device won't get any kind of naming structure when it goes into Azure AD and into Intune. Well, Autopilot, for all the things it cannot do, these are two things that it can do. Just about the only two things that Autopilot can do. Number one, it can make a user into a regular standard user instead of an administrator. And number two, it can name the device. And you're very limited in how you do this. You can put, the naming convention will be whatever text you want, and then after that it can be the serial number of the device or a random string of numbers or characters. 2, 3, 4, whatever. But at least you get some kind of control over it. All right, what about the scenario where a device is in Autopilot? What happens then? Well, in addition to naming the device and allowing us to make sure the user is just a standard administrator, from the user's point of view, this whole process becomes easier. When the machine boots up for the first time, once again, the second it's on the internet, it's going to query the Autopilot registration service. It will find itself as being attached to a particular tenant. It will go to that tenant, and immediately the user will see, welcome to company X. And it'll also have a bit of your company branding on it. You can have a little message right below the username area saying, hey, welcome here, type in your username, you're in the right place, whatever you want it to say. So they don't get to just choose any tenant. They don't have to click on organization or personal. They don't have to do a lot of things. Autopilot's job is to make this much easier on the user and to get them to the point where it says, welcome to company X, sign in with your email address or whatever you tell them. It's going to be their email, their UPN, but most users don't know what a UPN is. So they'll know right away they're in the right place. They'll type in their correct UPN. If they type in something for some other tenant, it's not going to accept it. It's going to force them into your tenant. So it cuts out all or a lot of the normal screens and decisions that users would have to make when they first boot up their system, points them right to your tenant. When they sign in, once again, their device is going to get Azure Active Directory joined and their device will be enrolled with Intune. Really the exact same thing as if they were to do everything manually without Autopilot. Just 2 or 3 exceptions. 1, we get to name the machine. 2, we get to make the user a standard user if we want instead of an administrator. And 3, we cut out a lot of the normal screens that they would see when they boot a machine up. We take the decision out of their hand, we agree to the license for them, and we point them right to our tenant, and that's what they see. Pretty much the first thing. They may have to choose keyboard layout, language. They'll also probably have to connect to the Wi-Fi because we don't know that. We can't pre-populate that, obviously, on the laptop, but they know what that is, and they can just join it as the out-of-box experience is starting up. It will ask them that. So Autopilot is a huge convenience, both for the user and for the administrator, reducing help desk calls. We don't have to walk people through this process. If we want to, we can even speed it up a little bit by shipping the devices to our techs first so they can take care of some of the joining process for the user. And that just actually speeds up the process when the user gets the laptop. They don't have to wait so long while everything is getting pulled down. And it also lets us maybe do some extra configuration at the bench. Hopefully we don't have to do any of that, but we also could do that. So that's it. Autopilot's a great convenience. The number one issue with it is getting those device IDs into the Autopilot database. Try and take advantage of manufacturers and even third-party resellers' ability to do this for you so that you don't have to do it yourself, because doing it yourself almost defeats the whole purpose of it. You have to have a tech now that deals with the computer and doing a lot of copying, running PowerShell scripts, taking a lot of time to do that. So see if you can get your manufacturer to do that for you. And if all things go well, you can just start shipping these devices right to the user and have them open them up for the first time, and Autopilot should walk them right into your tenant. That's it for now. Click on subscribe if you wouldn't mind, so we can grow this channel. We'll try and do these at least once a week, maybe twice a week. We're going to try and ramp it up a little bit. Thanks for watching, and keep safe on the internet and in Office 365. We'll see you next time.